Welcome to the IT Experience podcast. We're here to guide IT and global business services professionals in navigating experience management, focusing on how to optimize budgets and drive better business outcomes. Join us as we discuss the trends, tools, and strategies with top industry experts that are transforming the future of service delivery in large enterprises. This podcast is brought to you by Happy Signals, the leading experience management platform for IT and global business services.
Hello, and welcome to this month's ITXM Insights. So again, joining me today is Sami, our CEO, and Sakari, our product strategist. Hey guys, how are you doing?
Very good, thank you. How about you?
Doing very good. Thanks. So it's been a bit of a travel this month. I guess we've all been around the world in a way. So Sami, in the last episode, we were talking about those US events that you had listed, and you just came back, so maybe some greetings. So first you were in Dallas and then in Orlando, right?
Yeah, that is true. And what I learned is 2 weeks for me in hotels and only eating restaurant food is enough. So that's the first learning from that trip. But it was a great 2 weeks. ISG event in Dallas was really interesting. It was not so much of lead generation for us. It was more like learning from what is going on. A lot of good discussions about two main areas. So AI, first of all, what AI is how AI is changing IT, and especially how AI is changing the service desk, and how that will also influence the pricing of service desk or chatbots, and that from the perspective of customers and providers. It was an interesting event from that perspective, that they were both like providers and customers. And then, of course, ICA in the middle, when they are the analyst company doing analysis of the market and so on. So it was a great event. The other thing that was discussed, of course, when we are there, it was discussed a lot, was XLAs and IT Express management. Interestingly, again, we did find a new way of defining XLAs, which is, I think, a bit of a problem to the industry currently, that kind of people are talking about the same thing, but we are naming things like XLA 1.0, 2.0, 3.0 was 9 more basic XLAs or whatever is. And I think the work we are doing with XLA Institute is quite important, that we would have a one way of talking about it. Let's see how that will end up, but hopefully. So everybody is meaning good, but definitions are a bit different. But everybody is talking about value. That is what we all agree, and very heavily agree on that one. But how to do it really, and what are the metrics and what are not the metrics, I think that's the definitions need to be done.
Yeah, and probably, if you still have at the heart, you have the same ambition at it, then of course, it depends a little bit on your company, on your setup, what services are you actually providing, and so on. So yeah, makes sense.
Yeah, I think our view in that one is that some people are thinking that XLAs are a bit more. So I think our approach is more practical, something that can be reached fast. I do believe, and I love those like XLAs where people are really defining the business, like revenue generation and that. But in practice, those are so hard to implement for most industries that I would start a step-by-step approach to get there. But yeah, we can have another episode about the definition of XLAs with some other people.
But I guess it's kind of like this change thing. Usually, change is already hard. Why do you need to make it complicated with metrics and things as well? So sometimes just the first step, just keep it simple, is best, because then you can actually focus on the important thing and not get stuck with what about this one thing here and this number there, and how does it affect this balanced score and all these things. So people can sometimes get a little bit carried away on a sidetrack with that stuff, and then forget maybe the real purpose why we're actually setting up the XLA in the first place.
But I think those were the big things from the ISGM, and then in my head, after that, I'm thinking that the change in service management will be huge in Chennai, but the speed of it will be interesting.
Yeah,
it will mean that the cost of services will go down, but how fast it will go down when the chatbots are ready for that really they generate better outcomes for people than people. And I think there is a big role for us to be helping in that change from the current situation where there are the main channels, phone, email, portal, to moving to the chatbot way of working, which is more cold way of working. Yeah. And we know from our benchmark that typically then the experiences drop. So how to handle that change really, and how fast that will be, that is a big question for me. Even though technology start to be there, but it's not only that, it's we are not, maybe as people, we are not ready for it as much. All providers are not ready, all customers are not ready. So it will be interesting.
Cool.
Then
you had like a 700-kilometer straight road.
Pasi, no, 700 kilometers, 1,900 kilometers road to Florida. So we did we rented a car with the team and we did go to New Orleans for a weekend, and then we drove to Florida, Orlando for the HCI Service Management World, which was great event. First of all, it was great to meet all the people we already know from there. We were 5 people from our company, and it was a great event for networking. Also, I noticed that there was much more discussion about XLAs and really like understanding of experience management than the last time I was in UK. This time, US, sorry. I think the last time I was in US was almost 2 years ago, and people were excited about experience management. But now the difference there was that the questions from prospects and customers were more precise. So it was not any more new to them, but what we are talking about. But they have questions about how to do it and who should do it and what are the benefits really. So the discussion was much more mature, overall. Yeah. And I really like that. So it seems that, we currently have about 15 customers as happy seeing us from US, but I think now the market is more and more ready for us. So I think it will be interesting. And you guys in US, you will be seeing more pink in there for sure next year, because we want to be growing in US.
Yeah, and I think the pink will be shown next time at the pink event, actually. So when Sakari is speaking there, is February, Sakari? Or...
Yeah, the beginning of February.
Yeah.
But that's maybe a short summary on those events.
Okay, cool. Yeah, nice to hear that things are moving forward, the whole experience movement going forward. And maybe a shout out to the Ticket Volume podcast. I guess you met the guys there as well and so on. So,
true.
Okay. Okay, then next, let's look at some of the blog posts that we have had on the website again. And I think the first 2 are actually one of our customers explaining their journey, how they have been doing IT transformations and that kind of things. And the first blog is actually from an interview that we already had beginning of this year with Chris Facey from Campari Group. And Sakari, did any takeaways from Chris's interview for you?
Yeah, I think as Sami was explaining about the 2 events in the US and how there are many questions about how to define things, and then now more precise questions about like what experience management is, who should be doing it. Chris has been doing this for many years already. And one of the things that he has highlights in the blog article is a simple principle. And he said that like when they were launching human-centric IT within the Campari Group, there was this principle of every decision had to answer one key question: how will this improve our users' experience? There is this very simple principle that then everybody in IT can then understand and implement when they are starting to do those decisions in their day-to-day work. So I think I hadn't planned on saying this, but now when Sami was speaking about what he had seen in the US, I think that article specifically can be quite good for anyone wanting to look into what experience management is, just like the second blog article from one of our customers, from Prashant from PepsiCo as well. Yeah, it has the same ideas also in there, like how to drive that change.
Yeah, I think Prashant as well, now working at PepsiCo, but has done this already in other companies as well, has done it many times. And I think the article is really about that approach, not specifically for Pepsi, but actually what he has learned on when you're trying to drive this transformation to IT. I think the interesting aspect also on this article is the global business services side. So that is something that Prashant is driving now heavily as well in his organization.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think one fun thing that PepsiCo is doing is that they don't take this, they take it seriously, but for the end users and the external communication, they bring in a lot of color and a lot of humor in it. So they have these things like Hug at Work that boosts collaboration between different departments. They have this happiest region of the month friendly competition that just puts highlight on experience and then shows and elevates the parts of the organization that are doing a great job in driving that change, in driving that adoption.
Yeah. Cool. And I think this is actually a good segue to the next block, which is about using ITXM in other business functions. So like we were talking about earlier about global business services. So yeah, we have an article about how this actually applies to HR, to finance, and so on. Any takeaways that you got from this, Sakari?
Yeah, I think that this article, when I was reading at first, that I was like wondering, like, what is the one thing that our listeners would want to get from this? And I think it's that IT has a great possibility of leading the way in experience management. IT has been focusing on value for decades already in different ways, and experience management is a great way that has now that common denominator. How do people feel about these services? Do they feel that they are getting frictionless work and productivity out of it? And IT has the know-how of how to implement this. And if they do experience management in a human-centric way, it's very easy to then go and speak to HR, go speak to finance and other departments and say, hey, here's a model that is not only IT suitable, but could also work for you. So I think that's one great way of looking at it, that read this article if you want to already doing this and you want to expand it, you know that there is value for other parts of the business as well.
And I think in this business services, it's a important thing to understand from us in IT, from our perspective, is that it might be that when you are rollouting these kind of services to other units like HR, what we have learned already like 7 years ago, that people in those units might be a bit afraid of that centralized ticket way of working, because IT ticket way of working hasn't been having so good reputation. So those people in those areas are afraid of this change in the beginning if you are just starting your journey. So we know that there are Pepsi companies that are really doing it already, but there are still companies that are not yet doing enterprise service management or global business services, whatever name you want to use it. But for those people, experience management on top of those services and that change is even more important than it has been for IT. So I had one discussion with one HR director here in Finland when they were rolling. He said he has to have our product on top of that change because he's so afraid that now when they have taken away the people from the business units and centralized them, he doesn't know what the service quality will be, and he has to be able to communicate it. So remember that this might be a good thing to do at the same time you start to roll out enterprise service management. And we are, of course, happy to help in those discussions and experiences of what is typical for these different service areas, because we know from our benchmark that it's IT is performing better than the other business units will be in the beginning, which is quite interesting because the reputation might be different.
Yeah, and this is probably also a way to sell this idea that actually it's not about moving from email inbox into tickets so that it's much easier to handle, because people are very comfortable with inboxes and emails. So you try to give them another tool is not a good way to sell it, but actually to selling the value and what you get out of it through experience management is actually something to try. And maybe this is sometimes IT is, Achilles heel in a way that don't maybe know how to speak to more non-IT business services. Cool. Then the next one was from Roy Atkinson, again our dear friend, contributing to the blogs about aligning priorities for improvement. So again, Sakari, you want to summarize a bit? Finally.
Yeah, I think this one was really great, because if we pick out one of the key messages here is that towards the end of the article, Roy says that one of management's most important jobs is to remove barriers that prevent people from reaching their goals. And whether it's in global business services, whether it's in changing the way that IT works, it really can't be just a one-man show or a one-team show, that it doesn't happen well like that. So you need to find a way to bring these principles that focusing on people into the organization on a wider scale, step by step, but still you need to make it wider than just the one-man show. And one of the things that then Roy highlights in the article are certain principles or actions that should be highlighted or focused on in order to get there. He speaks about enhanced communication. We know how important communication is. It's the second part of our 4-step ITXM framework as well, sharing. You said, we did. We're listening to you, so we're doing what you need. Then the second one is incentives. If you have metrics and KPIs that are now driving people to, for example, close tickets in a very specific time, or to have an uptime of services of something, if that's the key metric, it's very difficult to get people to then focus on experience if the incentives are elsewhere. So think about where incentives are. Then training for end users, getting them to know what this is all about, what the value is, and also what's in it for them. And then the last thing is then a clear plan of action for what needs to happen and when. And we have seen that as well with our customers, is that when you have a clear plan, you have the steps, and you know that these are the steps we have now decided to take, that will always make it easier rather than trying to just go with a great concept and a principle, but you need to also then think about how do we sort of roll this out in the organization. So very practical, but with great statistics around about experience management and the different perception gaps that may exist between the end users and the management as well.
Sakari, I feel you made like the best possible summary of what experience management in 2 minutes. So that was 2 minutes, but I think we have to record that separately, and good points.
Thank you.
Cool. And then the last block was a history of the watermelon effect in IT. So, of course, this is a familiar subject, and I guess there's not a ITXM monthly without mentioning the watermelon. So, again, Sakari, what did you see from this article? It's interesting to hear.
Yeah, we have spoken about the watermelon in to very long extents, but I would still want to highlight this, that the regular listeners of this podcast and people working in this field might have gotten sick and tired of the watermelon, but still regularly we speak to people who have never heard of it, and it still works very well in just explaining that difference between the green metrics on the outside and the red inside. So I think we can still continue repeating this, and for those who have heard it too many times, just close your ears. There are still many out there who haven't heard it, and it is a great way of highlighting the value of ITXM. So let's keep doing it, repeating the message that hits home and gets that message across.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, I guess that was kind of the summary of the blogs that came out this month. Then I guess Sakari, there's with you and Roy, you are doing this 2025 trends thing now that's coming out then in December. Anything you want to say on that?
Yeah, so we talked about this with Roy recently, and like what we would like to highlight. And this is going to be a good one, I think, because we're going to take a little bit of a different approach. So I'm not going to reveal too much. So stay tuned, follow our social media channels. We will be posting that article and that podcast when it comes out. So that's in a couple of weeks' time at the latest.
Cool. So that's maybe like a good holiday listen then or read. Yeah. But otherwise, I think this is probably the last ITXM monthly we're going to do this year. So probably we'll be then back in January, February, right, guys? Cool. And I guess the last thing to do is to actually hope everybody happy holidays and actually to see you next year. Anything else you guys still want to say in the end?
Just as usual. We always have this question, and it's always, nope, that's it. Let's just finish it off.
Yeah. But I'm just asking, like, maybe if I don't ask, then you had to think about it.
Happy holidays to everyone.
But maybe on that, hope everybody doing out. Stay safe and stay happy.
If you liked this episode, please give us thumbs up, rating, or share it with your colleagues to help others learn about this topic as well. To learn more, go to happysignals.com.